Node.js CTC meeting for January 4th, the first one of 2017. Start the stand-up. So Anna, you're up first.
I'm gonna say that she has a pretty bad cough, so not gonna be much audio from her. But the stand-up notes didn't have anything. Hope feel better.
Okay. Yep. Definitely feel better. So next is, do we have Bradley? No. We don't have Nikita. We don't have Chris. Colin, yes. Colin, you're next.
Just reviewing issues and pull requests, some testing PRs, and enjoying the holidays. Next is Evan.
Yeah, I've been working more on allowing a buffer in crypto random bytes, and then I've been working on cutting 7.4.0. Next is Jeremiah.
Holidays, other than that, just miscellaneous minor stuff. Next would be Tracy if she were here. So I don't think Fedora's here. James?
Taking some vacation time. I've been reviewing and landing some PRs and then working on some URL and HTTP2 stuff. Next would be Josh.
Yes, sir. So yeah, coming back from vacation like everyone, trying to catch up on some of the diagnostic stuff this past couple days. Next is Michael Dawson.
Same for me. Was on vacation the last couple of weeks, and this week catching up on issues and reviewing some PRs.
I think Brian's next.
Okay, so I mostly worked on submitting PRs for a bunch of various performance improvements in core. Other than that, just the typical commenting on issues and reviewing PRs. Next is Miles.
Hey, so released a new version of version 4 and 6 yesterday. Reviewed PRs, commented on issues, changed my handle. You'll notice I'm no longer the Alpha Nerd. And just general work on Canary and the Gold Mine. Next up is Ali, who I don't think is here. So I'm just going to go down. And I think, is Targos here? Michael? I think you're the next one who's on the list.
Yes. Yeah, so I also enjoyed the holidays, and I watched a few issues and pull requests, not much this week. Next is Sakti Priyan.
I was working in the debugger tests, and I was trying to fix the child process issues, the kill signal thing. Apart from that, pull request reviews, and I was trying to fix this the streaming thing.
Okay, I think that is everybody. Did we miss anyone? Oh, Trevor's coming in. Let's get him a second. And everybody say hi at once. Like he's joining. He should pop in a second. Hey, Trevor.
We're just going to stand up right now if you have an update to give, Trevor.
There we go. I kept moving my icon around so I couldn't unmute myself. Vacation, mainly async hooks. I think been having some great help writing up the tests and docs, and as far as the API, I'm just about done fixing up all my remaining to-dos. So as soon as I get those tests uploaded, I think it'll be ready to be fully reviewed.
Well, I certainly hope everyone had a good holiday and nice and relaxing. Seems like most of us took some time off. Before we get into the agenda, we have the previous meeting review. If I recall, last week we didn't really have a lot of folks on the call, but we did talk through a few things. Talk about the NPM upgrade to 4.05 in master and v7. I know that's landed in master, but I'm not sure if that's landed in v7 yet. Talked briefly about console log and util format supporting the I integer conversion. Some cleanup on timers, the copyright attribution stuff, PR that I was working on. A PR I have for adding codes to warnings. And then we talked about the CTC meeting times. The note on the CTC meeting times, in case not everyone has seen the note, is that we've added a third time to the schedule to make it easier for our international participants. So we have the 2 times that we've had already. I don't know the conversions to, what the UTC conversions are, but 8 a.m. Pacific and noon Pacific, and then the other one is at 9 p.m. Pacific. And they're going to rotate each week. So definitely make sure that you're taking a look at the schedule that's been updated in the CTC repo for that. Any questions on the questions or comments on the previous meeting review before we get into the main agenda? Okay. So, main agenda items. First one, we're looking at the Node.js node repo number 10505, landing NPM 4 into Node 7. Jeremiah, do you know where this is at? The status of this one?
I mean, so NPM 4 is in Node master now. Contains relatively few and generally very obscure breaking changes. So the discussion is if we should pull it back into Node 7, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago. And there's support reasons for wanting to do that. We get new features then still in Node 7 for NPM 4. We also get to test NPM 4 in Node 7 already before we go into our next LTS. Also, it might be a bit of a stopgap if an NPM 5 comes out before or even after the next LTS. And additionally, it could be used as a sort of gauging mechanism, given that everything in it that is breaking is generally hard to hit. We could potentially pull that in and use that to look for how much reaction is depending on that sort of stuff for the people that actually use the NPM that ships with Node. So essentially we need sign off if we are comfortable with this or not.
Yeah. Anyone on the call have any objections or reservations about landing in NPM 4 and 7 at this point? Right. So not hearing any objections.
I mean,
thinking,
I kind of have like reservations too, but I think they're like acceptable.
Yeah. I think my key reservation would just be wanting it to sit in master for a couple of weeks to make sure that people actually have some time to test it. I'm not anticipating any actual issues given how obscure the breaking changes are.
I don't
Yeah,
have.
it would be.
I feel like it sitting in master doesn't really
I don't really.
solve that, though.
Yeah, so I don't have data to back this up, but I would highly suspect that npm pre-release branches get far more use than our master branch. Well, not necessarily than our master branch, but then the npm that's in our master branch.
Right.
Yeah, I feel
One
like
thing,
put it in V7 would kind of give us that kind of data.
Yeah.
But-
I'm kind of leaning the same way.
We could do like an RC or pre-release build with it in and see if we can get a couple more people to test it. But I think it'd be easier just to ask people to install npm 4 and see if it works for them if they're using npm 3.
Yeah, true.
one thing that we can consider as well is like, you know, we know the life cycle of version 7. We could, especially it becomes much easier for waiting a couple weeks anyways, is we could wait until we're like 2 months out from the next major before landing this. You know, that way if there are complications, it minimizes the amount of time since we're going to be dropping support for 7 anyways when it's done.
I would figure that if there were complications, we would probably revert back to npm 3.
Yeah, that's what I would think. I feel like we would want to know those complications sooner than later.
Yes.
And that's why I think I would like for it to land in V7, like sooner rather than later. That way we can start preparing people for when V8 does or version 8 does come out.
Have we already landed in master yet, or?
Yeah, it's it, master.
Yeah, okay. How long has it been there?
Weeks, I think.
Yeah, I landed it last week after the CTC meeting.
Last week.
Would anybody object to me including it in 7.4.0 today?
As long as we are okay with doing a quick reversion, if any significant issues do come up, I have no objection.
Yes, I will take responsibility for that. Like if we do get issues, I'll revert that. And
Yeah, I think that's, I'm on the same wavelength. As long as we're going to revert it quickly, it seems like the sooner the better gets us more advanced notice that there are going to be issues.
is
Okay,
this
any other thoughts? Good.
I was gonna say, is this something that we need to vote on, or
No,
We just need.
I don't think so.
We need like at least CTC review it because it's. Oh wait, well it otherwise would be a Semver major, right? I guess so. We should. So long as like we've looked at it, we should be okay.
Yeah.
I think the process is if there's any objections, then we have to go to a vote. But if there's not, then and we have consensus, I don't think we have to go to a vote.
Agreed.
but do we have enough people for it to be consensus? Considering not everybody's here, is kind of the point I was getting at.
I think that at this point we have enough consensus to get a PR open. Then if anyone who's not here objects to it, then they can weigh in on the GitHub thread. The PR. Just make sure we tag it. Just make sure we mention Node.js CTC and tag it for CTC review.
Well, there is an issue. I mean, there's an issue open that was on the CTC agenda, and nobody has Well, it doesn't look like anybody's objected to it there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll plan on including it, and if anybody does object, then they can do that in the PR. But I'll get that updated after this call.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments on that before we move on? Okay. I'm just looking. We're already halfway through the time of the call. We don't have a lot. We have several more items on, so let's keep moving. Console log detail format supporting the %i integer conversion. 10292. So I'm not quite sure where this is at. Anyone have any significant objections to this?
So SolarWind tagged this, but like 2 weeks ago, and they're like this issue is not really just like this one thing. So I'm not sure what we're actually discussing at this point in time.
Right. I was thinking
I
the
think-
same thing when I looked this over. It looked like there are a number of non-standard console behaviors or quasi-standard, and this is one of them. But maybe it's a bigger picture.
Well,
what kind of standards on console do we adhere to?
there never was a standard, right? Like this is the problem again. We had this sort of like with the it's like the same thing we've experienced with the URL parsing stuff. There never was a standard. So now there's like one that's by the WhatWG working group, or rather, there's like a work in progress spec. And I mean, it's a good amount of our behavior is not the same as the browsers and has never been.
And to be honest, to be fair, that's actually a large reason why they're looking at creating a spec, because there have been differences across implementations. And it's always gone back to, hey, there's no spec, so we're going to do what we think needs to get done. So the fact that they're putting a spec in place is, I consider that a positive step. We just have to decide how closely we're going to want to track it once it's there, or if we even want to get, we may even want to get involved in helping shape it.
Right. So a couple of us have gotten involved in talking. I guess like the spec process for the WhatWG working group is mostly based off of like specking what's there that's most common. But like that's like really problematic for some things like console.assert, where for the last 4 or 5 years we've had like a completely different behavior, and changing that would probably be painful.
For assert, there was the discussion about perhaps making a new API surface that had converged behavior between the browser and Node. I think, like, the meta issue here is whether or not we want to make an effort working with the what working group to try to find convergence. And the biggest struggle there is going to be that a lot of the browser vendors have similar implementations. And in a lot of these cases, Node's behavior will just lose out due to, just pure numbers as to how many implementations exist that are different.
Yeah, I don't really expect us to be able to follow perfectly whatever spec is there anyways.
Yeah, not without either taking the significant breaking change, or taking a route like what we did with URL and do something in parallel, which is, has problems of its own.
I mean, well, we can't really do that, right? Because like the entire idea, so like we don't need the console API in Node, right? The entire reason why it exists, and like the entire reason why like set timeout and set immediate exists, and you can look back through like the commit history for this, is to make it like have the same API roughly as a browser, but then not quite, because things weren't like as uniform 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So that would be an argument towards making it as consistent as we can.
I think Sam Roberts made a pretty good point in the issue about how what it does, what it's meant to do in a browser versus what it's meant to do in Node is pretty different, though.
Yeah, I mean, the spec allows for this, but like there's console.clear, the spec says it can do nothing, but like, I mean, that's something maybe people expect it to do something most of the time, but like there's no way we can implement console.clear because we don't have control of the terminal or really whatever's consuming the standard out streams.
So we should be a little careful because the inspector actually hooks directly into our console API. Have people thought about this?
What do you mean?
If you console.log and you have the node inspector open, the node inspector also displays it. In addition to that, it actually patches console if you fire up node with the inspect flag on.
Like maybe it shouldn't be doing that.
It needs to do that if it wants to show you the console.
Yeah. I think it's the fact that we've never really produced any clean way of hooking into the console output, other than basically hacking into it.
I mean, you can listen on the stream, but I guess like that doesn't work for like some of these other methods.
That doesn't entirely work either because they need to actually implement things like console.group is actually added and other things. Also, hooking into the stream is after it's been formatted, and their formatting is slightly different, which is part of what this issue is.
Okay. But do we have enough information right now to be able to make any kind of decision on this call? It does not sound like it. I think we probably need to return the conversation to GitHub and revisit it.
I mean, the only thing we can, say is that at least whether or not, I guess most of us are interested in following some sort of console spec or not.
I would say eventually yes, depending on how much pain is actually involved in doing so. At the same time, I don't want to see smaller changes like the %I and this particular pull request. I don't want to see these kind of things get held up by that, because the changes that I see in this %I in 10292 seem useful. Whether we're following that standard spec precisely or not. So, I mean, does landing this PR make it? Will it add to our pain later on?
This isn't the PR.
I'm sorry. What was that?
As far as I'm aware, there is no PR.
Let's see. What is this? Is this an issue?
The link thing is an issue.
But it does suggest the code change, which is like a one-liner.
Sorry.
Basically says they can create a PR if it makes sense.
I don't know if we should. I mean, this can be done in userland, right? It's already done in userland. Like, isn't there a printf package?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that it's like standard and always in there. You can always rely on it being in there by default.
I think something that should be considered is we actually ship 2 different consoles with the inspector having its own implementation entirely.
I mean, I think I'm okay with like moving towards more spec parity, but I'm not in any real way interested in losing existing functionality, which is part of why I'm not very happy about the %d thing, because like our thing shows it if it's a floating point, it just prints it out as a number, so you still see the decimals if it has those, and if it doesn't, it just prints it out as an integer. And we'd be losing something like that, and maybe I mean, like %j for JSON probably would not be like spec. So would we? I guess we wouldn't necessarily be required to remove that, but like, I mean, why would we want to?
We could try to add it to the spec.
I was told that was not particularly an option at this point.
Yeah, the WG
You'd be
is very
surprised.
tricky about that kind of stuff.
I can move some stuff for that one.
Maybe we could get somebody from that works on the console standard to join a meeting and kind of see like where the differences are.
I mean, the differences are mostly like documented between this thread and there's a couple links in this thread to the whatweg repo, which is whatweg/console. I'll copy that and paste it in the chat.
No. Okay. So I think I'm just looking at the time, and we have a few other issues. Why don't we return the conversation to GitHub? It seems like we have more discussion that we need to have around this. We need more investigation into what WG is doing. We need a decision if we're going to try to get more involved in the WG effort to actually define this. And we need a decision on how much we actually care about following the spec. So, and I just don't think we're going to be able to get through that all right now. So unless anyone has any really strong feelings or opinions, more opinions to express right now, I suggest that we move on.
Let's move on.
Okay. Okay. Timers, clean up extraneous property on immediate 10205. I believe, Jeremiah, this is also yours.
Yeah, this is mine. Can we please get rid of this property? It was added kind of accidentally in a commit that I reviewed, and I missed this. But there is now an extra property on immediates that duplicates existing functionality, does not work as expected.
Jeremiah.
It was added recently.
Oh, you realize you're muted?
Please don't mute me there. I'm not gonna notice in the current setup. So right. What was I saying to myself? Right. So there's now this extra property on immediates that is partially my fault because I merged the commit that added it. So it's been in there for a couple months. It duplicates an existing functionality that's already there. It doesn't work as you would expect. You can't always assign to it, and it won't always work the way the previous property that also still exists does. and there's not really any reason to keep this. Like, again, it just duplicates behavior and doesn't even work the way you'd expect. It was added about 2 to 3, maybe 2.5, 3 months ago. And in the meantime, we've also removed properties that have been around way longer and have been way more visible. So I don't really see any reason why we would not just remove this property too.
I'm trying to look. I know Nikita did some looking around on one of these. I just can't remember if this was one that he did, to see if it was actually used anywhere. Have there been? Is there any evidence whatsoever that it's actually used?
I'm not sure he has looked at this thread, but this property name is not. I think you'd get a lot of false positives. It's just underscore callback. In fact, it might have already conflicted with something that someone else in the ecosystem was doing, for all we know. I mean, we could look.
But it's an underscored property. It's never been documented. It's only been there for a few months. Yeah.
If anyone wants to be using this, they are going to be using underscore on immediate, because A, that has been around for the last, I don't know how many years, and it actually works.
Hi, this is Rich. I got to drop off soon. I just wanted to really quickly register. On a micro level, I'm totally okay with this PR landing. On a macro level, I'm not comfortable with the way we do these things, just in general, that we don't seem to have a concrete policy about what we consider Semver major, and we kind of just like, yeah, this one should go. So I just wanted to just register that before I drop off, that's all.
Also, I don't want to be stuck with this property into the future.
Did this go out in any of the LTS? Like, is it in specs?
Good question. I think if it's in 6, we should take it through a deprecation cycle. If it's not in 6, it's just in 7, then I think I'm okay with just dropping it.
Yeah, I'm sort of like, that's what I was thinking. Like, I think it's a much easier decision. If it's never been in an LTS, then I think we could, give ourselves the flexibility is make that one of our policies that, it's, if it hasn't been in an LTS, then it doesn't necessarily need that deprecation cycle.
It is in V6.
Okay.
I think it might be in V4 too.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Give it.
I guess
Michael, thanks for raising that. Yeah, Jeremiah, I definitely emphasize that just not wanting to keep things around that are just kind of are broken, but I think it's just safer, even if it's extremely unlikely that anyone is using this. I think it sends a much better message to the ecosystem if we are consistent about these things. And even if it's an absolutely pointless and worthless API, we still take it through a proper deprecation cycle since it's been in an LTS.
Why would we not just remove it in V8 then? Like, it's an underscored property. It's not even like documented.
Because that's not a proper deprecation cycle. I mean, there's other things that we're, that we would like to see just removed too, right?
Yeah, but those actually have like usage. This is ridiculous.
Maybe what we need is some kind of exception policy.
Like, if you want to like deprecate this thing, you're probably gonna deopt or like make set immediate not that fast, because it's kind of inconsistent in how it works. I mean, I don't. Maybe you could, but like, it'd be weird. I don't know.
If we make if we go ahead and change all of the internals, where it's using the on immediate and just make the public accessor for a callback and make that deprecated, why would it deopt within the code instead of immediate? None of the internal usage would use it. It would just be an alias for on immediate the way it is now. It would only deopt if somebody's actually using it.
Have we seen if there's a performance difference in adding the deprecation warning for without it being used? Because I assume we just do like a getter on it.
Okay, I feel like further discussion on that requires that somebody actually write a test first. So let's not address hypotheticals. Now, on a macro level, again, it almost everything in Node is in some way publicly accessible, even if it's through a ridiculous way. So does this mean, from the discussion, does this mean that every time we want to remove or change a property on internals that we have to deprecate it first?
It means we need a better policy on what we consider an internal. It's okay to just remove versus deprecate.
Well, no. It's what I'm saying is, how do you define internal? Like, how internal is so internal that we don't care if we break somebody? Like anything on process bindings or not? Or anything on a constructor that you can only get via the dot constructor property from an object, from a hidden handle.
So these are really large discussions that probably are going to take some time to sort out. And I guess one question is, do we want to hold this up while we're having that discussion, or do we just want to make a decision on this, land it, or whatever, and move the discussion of what really is our SEMVer policy, move that to a separate issue?
I think we definitely need to have a separate conversation about what that SEMVer policy is. I started at PR, kind of refined that, and it kind of stalled out on discussion. I can refresh that conversation, and we can continue it there.
Can you throw that into the meeting notes? The link to that.
Yeah, hold on. As far as this PR is concerned, I think that we can get some experimentation that shows, adding a deprecation message, whether it does or does not cause a performance impact on this when it's not used. Then we can, I think we can make forward. I keep coming back to, I would rather this go through a deprecation cycle since it is in an LTS. If it hadn't been delivered at an LTS, then I would say go ahead and remove it. But since it's there and we have that stability requirement in the LTS, that we should err on the side of more caution.
Well, we can not remove it in the LTS if you really want. Again, keep in mind that, these might have even been backport. I didn't check, but we removed stuff in optimization commits that was around way longer.
I know, and things have come back and bit us.
None of those have come back and bit us. So
why don't we just call for a vote in the PR? Because this discussion is going in circles.
Okay.
Because it seems like this needs a vote, and we definitely don't have consensus.
Yeah, I think Trent's other point was that Rich's other point was really we need to also come up with a way that we have, agreed set of rules so that we don't look at each one of these as a one-off and just say, yeah, okay, this is
Yeah, and James said he's going to link a PR in the doc notes about a PR he created about that specific thing. I didn't know what had been created, so hopefully we can pick up discussion on that.
Okay.
And maybe label that PR CTC agenda.
Yeah, it needs to be updated. I mean, what I put in there originally was largely straw man. So it was really kind of figure out what we wanted to do. Just open to start the conversation about what we wanted the policy to actually be. I'm looking for the link right now. Yeah, so we can open it up for more discussion and vote in the PR for this one. Again, that is 10205. And let's open it up for discussion and voting for the next week, and then let's make sure this is on the agenda for next week's call for final decision. Sound good?
Okay. So I'm not really like very happy about like the politics that's kind of going around this stuff. Like it seems to depend on like who notices what and like can move the most amount of people. So the other pull request that I'm talking about that removes something, I actually objected to that being removed, and nothing was done about that. And it's
okay.
like
This isn't politics.
Now,
this isn't politics. It's policy, and our policy is crap. Well, non-existent. And so the fact we need policy is just coming up strongly right now, right?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with this. I mean, it really comes down to just, what is our policy going to be and what are we going to stick to? Because, having to go through this process of, are we going to make an exception for on a case-by-case basis it makes it really difficult. Okay. Yeah. Let's just let's open it up for a vote in the GitHub thread, and then by next week let's have a decision. Okay. We got like 10 minutes left in the call, so we have more agenda items to get through. It should be relatively straightforward, but not a lot of time left. Moving on, issue 10116, actually PR 10116, add code to warnings, assign codes, deprecations. This one I put on the agenda largely just to get folks looking at it. Need some either sign off or objections to be registered for this before it can land. It's been open for a couple of weeks now. If I can ask folks to please go take a look at it and weigh in. I appreciate it. It is a fairly large PR. What it does is add a static ID to all deprecations and prints that ID out when the warning is printed. It also adds a new command line flag for redirecting warning output to a file. This was done from as a result of conversation at the Collaborator Summit in Austin to make dealing with deprecations easier with regards to NPM installs and just various ecosystem things. Basically, NPM would be able to set this command line flag or environment variable when it installs, so that the installs aren't as noisy and they can do more intelligent things with the deprecation warnings that are printed. But just largely folks to go out and take a look at it. Does anyone have any comments, objections, opinions on 10116 before we move on?
It looks like it follows a similar idea to the code to error PR that you created in the past.
Yep. Same basic idea. The error code ID is still one I'm going to be pushing on. I purposely haven't been because we've had other things going on in it, and that one is such a disruptive PR. It touches so many different things. I want to make sure we get it right. It takes a smaller chunk, so if we can get this one right, it kind of gives us a stepping stone to do the errors.
Cool.
And this PR also gives us a single page in the docs that will list all of the deprecations, even doc-only deprecations and runtime deprecations. So we have a central place to point people to for information about the deprecation. So the decisions that we made about why and what else to do, that kind of thing, it will give us a place to document all that. So.
I guess I should add a comment in the thread, but I think we should, at least for like really old deprecations eventually, we should at least have policy to just remove everything except for like, this was the deprecation, this was what was deprecated, and use this API. Like that information, the other information can be stored in Git history somewhere, but once it's like 5 years old, like we really don't need like tons and tons of wordiness on it.
What about deprecation of entire modules like domain? Domain is completely deprecated, but it itself is not listed.
Every deprecation, whether it's module level, API level, whatever, anything would be given a static ID that would be listed in that document. And that ID
never
would
mind.
never.
Yeah, sorry. My search foo just failed. I see it. Sorry.
So requiring
those
domain would just be like a separate ID, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. And those IDs would never change. So even if that code eventually is completely removed, the ID for that deprecation would still remain in that document, and the IDs would never change. So whatever that deprecation is, if we completely remove the domains module at some point in the future, the documentation for that would still be there in that one thing. And it could be reduced to around this thing no longer exists. Don't use it. Right.
Move on.
Deprecate old debug protocol 10320.
I think Michael Zasso added that just now. Is that right, Michael? It's not at the top.
I added it in the Google Docs, but it was added by Rich to the agenda.
Actually, me, I just copied it from the minutes section.
Like, okay, so what other choice do we have for this, other than like shim it in V8 and deprecate it in V8, which is like massive overhead.
What exactly is the question here? Whether it should be deprecated, whether...
No, the question is this: the deprecation, docs only deprecation should probably happen now if the debug protocol is going away in version 8 of Node.js. But docs only deprecation is semver major. At least that's James's opinion, and probably the opinion of a lot of other people. So,
well, we've always treated it as semver major.
Right. I would argue that kindness to the community means getting it in the documentation now rather than waiting for version 8, because by version 8 it'll already be gone.
I think we should do a runtime deprecation of it. Because it just won't exist in the next major. We can like docs deprecate it like back further if we need to, but like it's just not gonna like even exist. You may as well tell people like right up front that like this thing is not going to exist.
And there is a PR for the that other. I wrote it in there. The other thread with the PR for the runtime deprecation in code. I have to update it to use. I think that to use James's new codes and things. But the pull request is there already. I think that's what you're saying, Jeremiah. That in the second one.
I don't think we want to runtime deprecate it until we have node inspect, right?
In terms of the
What's the other option?
I don't know.
In terms of the doc deprecation, so if we don't want to actually make it a deprecation, can we just put the same text in saying we know this is going away in V8, therefore be warned, it will be gone in V8.
Why not just deprecate it then? That's what a deprecation is.
Yeah, I don't really see the point in deprecating something without deprecating it.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
you know, if we're looking, I'm looking at I can't see why we wouldn't give people a heads up that it's going to go away. If there's any concern about the fact that deprecations have a certain process they have to follow, then, you know, that would be a way to get around that. If we think making an exception doesn't affect the process and there's not a concern, then yeah, we could just go ahead. But if we say, well, we don't want to be seen to, you know, violating our own processes, then just basically giving people a heads up is another way to go.
I mean, we're violating our own process anyways by removing it.
Well, I guess for V8, we've always basically taken the position that we can't fix all the V8 changes and, you know, that they just happen, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just, and this goes back to, you know, not having a great policy on this, and this is kind of being forced on us without being able to take it through a proper cycle. I think, as much as it sucks, doing a runtime deprecation in V7 is probably the best thing to do. It's the most responsible thing to do, at least.
So this pull request is just a docs deprecation. So I mean, if there's consensus that that's the way to go, let's at least make sure we document that fact.
Yeah, let's agree on that and get that part done for sure.
Yeah.
So we're saying the doc deprecation, go ahead and do now. Runtime deprecation, we're not sure that we want to land now.
I mean, I think they should probably just happen in like one commit. Like, why wouldn't they?
Well, my only thinking is that until we land node inspect, Jan's thing, until, you know, what you're talking about bundling, when we have that, we'll have a command line debugger again, and so that might be the time to do the runtime deprecation rather than doing the runtime deprecation when there's no alternative yet.
I feel like
what's the difference though?
I feel like that's the same thing we're doing with like the domain module. We all hate the domain module. We all want it gone, but it's documentation only because there's no alternative to it.
Yeah, but that's saying we can actually decide not to like remove in the next version. I don't really see why making why having node inspect as an alternative really makes that much of a difference. I mean, we can update the message that this might print then, but whether or not we have an alternative, it's going, this thing is going away. We can say this is going away, and we're discussing an alternative at URL.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
yeah,
even
to be clear, there's actually there are actually two deprecations, I guess, when you think about it. There's the one which is -- debug, which would activate the listener, and then there's node debug, node space debug, which spins up the CLI debugger.
There's some other related APIs.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is that, you know, even if we don't have node inspect, that we do fully have the other, you know, the new listener is there. It's just the CLI debugger is the node inspect. So maybe that shouldn't hold up, including that run, since the main thing is not the CLI debugger, at least in my opinion, it's the listener, you know, whether we're listening for the inspector protocol or the old protocol.
I disagree.
You think the CLI debugger is?
Yes.
We could include a warning on -- debug and wait till node inspect lands to get the warning on node space debug. So we could break up the two deprecations. Right now they're all in one PR 102.76, but we could split them into two. and then we could hold on the node space debug deprecation till node space inspect lands. Maybe that's.
So it seems like a good starting point. Put that up for a vote in the PR. It's way easier to deprecate passing a parameter.
I'm still not sure why we wouldn't like deprecate the other one too, unless we really still think that there's discussion of maybe making node space debug an alias to node space inspect in the future. Like unless that happens, it's just going away, right? Like it's just gonna disappear in the next version.
We're out of time. Is this discussion going somewhere, or should it be pushed over to the PR?
Let's push it over to the PR. I think we have a consensus that a docs deprecation is something that definitely should happen. We just need to get clarification on whether and when to do the runtime deprecation.
Yep.
Okay. The next two are related. We just got a couple of minutes. I don't know if we need to do much discussion. I just want to draw people's attention to it. The restoration of the copyright attribution discussion. I have updated the PR that restores the original copyright and license header in only the files that are still remaining from the PR that changed the copyright headers in the first place. And then I opened a second PR that reverts that and then changes the copyright header to use the new copyright and a link to our license file. It's kind of a torturous process, but what needs to happen for both of these, and they have to happen in order, is that the Node Foundation Legal Committee has to review them and make sure that it's adequate, and that we have to sign off on it as well. The one that restores the original attribution, or the legal committee is basically telling us we have to do that. So there's not much that we can do there. There are some other conversations that are happening to get clarification. I know Ben is asked to talk to the legal committee to get some of his questions answered. If anyone has any specific questions for the legal committee, I encourage y'all to reach out directly. Connect to them through Michael. But we need to get review on these. At the very least, we need to land the one that restores the original contribution, the original attribution, fairly soon. And then the other one that changes that attribution is going to be a larger discussion. We have to get the legal committee sign off before we can land that. Okay. So just encourage folks to go take a look at those and review.
Thank you so much. So, okay, so you're saying I can ask the legal committee a question via Michael?
Yes. There currently is no direct way of contacting them, so you need to connect through Michael.
Peachy. So, do you know why, off the top of your head, we couldn't? I mean, it seriously sounds like all they want is to re-add it for whatever unknown reason. But then we can change it over. Like, I don't see why we can't discuss what we're going to change it to, and then essentially just put the whole thing in one giant PR where for one stupid commit, we introduce them, and then the very next commit, we swap it over to the new one.
If you look at my second commit, that's exactly what I do. So I have the one PR that restores, and then I branched off that, reverted that commit, and then added a new commit that changes to the new.
Wait, what? What's the PR number? Because the one I'm looking at only has one commit.
Let me pull it up.
They're separate PRs.
Oh, the separate PR. Okay.
I think what you're asking is that if they can land at the same time.
Yeah, pretty much in the same PR. So they're right next to each other.
I think that's very unlikely to happen because the legal side of things will want to review what is done once
That
it is
no,
done,
no, no.
and
That
then
makes no
move.
sense because they can review it in like diff format. That is absolute crap. If you're telling me it has to land in code for them to review it.
No,
So-
well, sorry, it's not really about the review. It's about like, well, it's about joint actually then seeing that we've done something about it and like actually done something
It's
about
in
it.
the
Not just
freaking
being
commit
a PR.
history. It's in the commit history. How can you not see that it's been done?
Well,
Okay,
no,
so-
it's
so-
not in the commit history until you merge it.
Oh, yes, that's the point.
So the point of having the separate PR that restores first has to do with making a good faith effort to make sure that we're following our own license requirements and demonstrating that good faith effort. The second PR that changes the license also shows that, hey, okay, we're going to take this through our actual defined policy process of having the legal committee review these kind of changes before we actually land them.
Okay, so can we
those
have the
are
legal
two
committee
separate
review
thoughts.
both PRs, okay them both, and then land both PRs right next to each other?
If we can get the legal committee to say, okay, the new changes look good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which also involves having those the old copyright holder agree to it, then we can just land my second PR and we get exactly what you want because it has all three commits: the original, restoration, the revert of that, and then the change.
Okay, so how do we put pressure on them to do that? Because if their review process goes anything like what this has been like, I don't want to be stuck with that massive header at the top of our files for the next 6 months.
We can try, but we have had an issue with a lack of responsiveness from the legal committee in the past, right? So, the best we can do is knock on their door a bunch and just say, hey, we really need you to review and give us a timely review.
Can we move this to the private segment? This meeting's gone way over.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're definitely done with the public agenda. Do we have anybody queued up for Q&A?
Not really any questions. Someone says they've been using npm 4 for a while, no issues. There was someone that made some comments about the console spec conformity, and I directed them to the issue where they have left a comment. And then someone else says, "Oh, the levels of frustration is comedy." So I think we're good to end there.
Okay, cool. And thank you all for joining on the public portion. This ends the public part of the meeting.
Comedy, tragedy, whatever.